We have arrived at number 12. The Iron Tigran Petrosian, born in 1929, dies in 1984. World champion from 1963 to 1969. Peter, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, well, we tend to compare these four Soviet champions, and Spassky, Tal, and Smyslov, and now the Armenian Petrosian. And we put Petrosian first of the four, and we do it for one simple reason. He won 2 World Championship matches. I mean,
Right.
well, that just doubles the score of some of the others. I mean, he beats Botvinnik to get the title in '63, and then he defends the title actually against
Spassky.
Against Spassky, right? So he didn't have to face a rematch against Botvinnik because they changed the rule by then. So he beats Spassky and then later loses it to Spassky. But he wins 2 World Championship titles and loses 1 match. On the world ranking, he has 2 years and 7 months as world number 1. I mean, that's a bit below Tal and quite some below Smyslov. But we think the match win matters more in that respect. And then also, he has quite some longevity, which one has to admit, so does Smyslov. But Petrosian is a candidate for the first time in '53, where he wins Zurich, and then he's a candidate for the last time in 1980. So that's a huge span, actually. And also, when we look at this Sona's 20 years average rating, which is the highest you can look at on his survey, he comes out not a 8 historically. So he does have the longevity thing as well. And combining that with 2 World Championship matches, well, he gets spots number 12.
Yeah. The one thing that he doesn't have, well, we haven't rated that so highly on this list, is tournament victories, which I think is more of a stylistic issue because he has this famous defensive prophylactic style, which means he loses very early but does not win a lot of games. So he often finishes, whatever, second, third, but does not win that many tournaments. In a match, however, if you don't lose, you're normally in good shape.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know much about his character, but just one thing stuck to me that, well, a Danish correspondence player, actually a former world champion, Jan Slot, told me that there was this Russian saying, Soviet saying that, actually the ambitious one was Petrosian's wife. If she hadn't pushed him, he wouldn't have become the world champion. I have no idea about that, but that could at least be talking about his character trait, that maybe he wasn't trying to win all the time and he needed to be pushed in the right direction there. It's quite an anecdote to put out here, but there could be quite some truth in it, I would say.
Yeah. I wouldn't know, frankly. The one thing where he leaves a big legacy is this stylistic thing, be it for good or bad if you think he was dull, but his defensive technique, this prophylactic thinking, the exchange sacrifices, in a way. I guess he took Nimzovic's ideas about all this prophylaxis and combined them with being an incredibly strong player and tactician, which, was a very effective style.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. No, I quite liked his games. I think when I was younger, there was like a huge blue and a huge red sort of two volume work on his games, which I very much enjoyed. But actually, his own writings are very limited as far as I understand, right? I mean,
he worked on something which was, I think, published after his death, which his wife or someone put together then. But yeah, he hasn't written a lot.
No, I think at some point I got some collection of his articles, probably translated from Russian, and it was actually very good. It's very interesting to read, but sort of maybe that goes along with his character trait, that this sort of huge productivity you will see from others, or you mentioned, for instance, Tal's books and such. He doesn't seem to have been creating to that extent, but when he wrote something, I think it was very interesting. I think also there is a famous book where a lot of world elite grandmasters are writing a chapter where his chapter is absolutely excellent and such. So what I have read from him is of huge quality, but the quantity seemed to be very small too.
Yeah. No surprises. He would have interesting things to say, but he chose not to do so that often. Then, what is there to say about his later career? He loses the rematch to Spassky.
Mm-hmm. And then Spassky, and then for the next cycle, Fischer appears, right? And that somehow, then it's Fischer and then it's Karpov. But he still hangs in there. But of course, he loses to Fischer, but he loses to Fischer in a respectable competitive manner compared to the two previous Fischer opponents.
He doesn't lose 6-0, but yeah,
exactly.
doesn't have a chance
already progress, and he wins the first game and things like that. It's a very interesting match in that sense, while the others is sort of one-dimensional, right? And well, also I don't know if it's psychology or what one would say, but I think there's also this famous saying that, well, Petrosian in some kind of position, well, understood that, well, if you need to beat the opponent, then first, well, you move around for 30 moves, and then you actually execute your plan. So he seemed to be practical and sort of psychological in some respect, right? And
this do not hurry principle, as Shereshevsky called it, he was excellent at. Yeah.
No, he's a cool player. You have to be to become the world champion twice and such, right? And I think also Dorowetsky has some books where he speaks about prophylaxis, and he shows a very beautiful game by Petrosian, probably against Gofeld, I think, if I'm correct, and such, where exactly the logical plan would be to push for G4, but Petrosian, of course, plays G3 first and then prepares it a lot and things like that. And no, he's an amazing positional player in that sense, but of course also with a keen eye for tactics, as we'll soon see.
Yeah. Anyway, Tigran Petrosian at the 12th spot. Yeah, I think it's fair we have him ahead of Tal, Spassky, Smyslov, and behind Botvinnik, mainly because of our criteria that World Championship match wins, pretty much.
You can make an argument with Smyslov that he's have a longer peak as number one and such, but I think we agree that a World Championship win is a heavy thing here.
Yeah, and also against tremendous competition, which is why we have him ahead of Steinitz. Where to rate Steinitz against all these guys is,
No, he beats Spassky in 66, where Spassky is up and coming and very ambitious. This is, I mean, he actually holds off the challenger like that. That is no doubt impressive.
Let's look at a game from that match. Petrosian with the white pieces against Boris Spassky. A lot of G3 Kings Indians in this series for whatever reason. Yeah, one of the critical lines here. Black plays for this b5 usually, but Spassky throws in pawn to e5, blocking the center, which I guess is also theory. Not up to date as usual, but I've seen
maybe they would sort of exclude a6 and queen c2. I think Kasparov played this in some game, perhaps against Belyavsky in Linares, if I'm not mistaken, and such. But well, it's reasonable, but that it's not too popular, where one can get the impression here. It also has to be said that this setup is line with white is a huge favorite of a later Armenian star, Aronian. So, well, it's not hard to guess why he liked it. So,
yeah. b3 and e4. In general, Petrosian was a well-renowned killer of the King's Indian defense. That's his famous quote. I've fed my family because of opponents playing the King's Indian for years. Must be nice. EFGF. Looks like black has achieved some activity, but he does have this bad piece on a5, which will be an issue if the game opens up on the king side, which is what happens. Pawn to b5, pawn to f3, and Spassky goes for the infight with pawn to e4. But Petrosian is not impressed, just has more pieces in this area. The game remains very sharp. These are, you won't be gifted a win just by putting your pieces on nice squares. You have to do some work against the likes of Spassky, f4, bishop h3. And Petrosian with his trademark exchange sacrifice. 93, takes. Yeah, the dominating factor remains that this knight is just not contributing. Well, the white knights might not be doing much currently, but they can join the action.
They soon will, right? And now the bishop enters. Well, you're saying the culprit is the knight on a5. He's just effectually not in the game, right?
Yeah. Bishop g4. This is a massive threat, which is parried by knight takes f4. But here comes the next exchange sacrifice, clearing that square for the bishop. King f8, I'm assuming, is checkmate in 3 moves.
That's a bit strong, but I think you can take the h-pawn with check and give another check and such.
Okay.
Yeah.
No direct checkmate, but white will win. So he had to go rook f7, and Petrosian now brings the cavalry, also stopping that queen g5 check, queen h4, knight d6, queen g5, king h1. Once again, these things had to be calculated, but it's not surprising white is on top. And the final combination, which is rightly very famous, I guess also the reason we
Still, doing it at a world championship match is quite something, right?
Must be a nice feeling, no? To play queen h8 check here.
Oh, I think only Magnus's
Give
queen
it a
h6 comes to mind in the same category,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm. And white emerges a piece up. So yeah, he could calculate and attack, but he did it in his own specific style.
Yeah, but I like this. It's very concrete, brilliant tactics, but also a very clear sort of strategic theme and such, right? And I mean, you can see he crawls back to come out because he has some kind of long-term potential and such. And we're talking about a young Spassky, so it's not exactly a bad opponent. So.
No, absolutely. All right, I think that's all we have on Petrosian, great champion. Very unique style. The one thing he didn't have, as mentioned, was tournament dominance, but that's not what he focused on either. He was, an amazing player.